Hi, everyone, and welcome to A Better Future Starts Here, a live weekly show brought to you by the American Society for the Positive Care of Children, otherwise known as American SPCC. I'm your host, advocate, and catalyst, Tracy Kawa. American SPCC is dedicated to improving the lives of children in the United States. We are America's voice for children, bringing individuals and organizations to ensure that children are raised in a safe environment so that they can become happy and secure future leaders of tomorrow. Our goal is to bring you perspective, knowledge, and industry support from leaders and professionals who are dedicated to empowering children and families. Today, we're happy to bring to you Charles Hunt, a resilience expert, adjunct professor, and motivational speaker. He's a former college recruiting, talent management, diversity, and supply chain leader who left the corporate world to fulfill his vision of building unbreakable spirits and cultivating resiliency for those who, like him, have the audacity to succeed. He helps students and young professionals build resilience, believe, believe in that which is larger and greater for themselves, and create the academic, economic, and career plans to get there. Charles has led programming at premier colleges, universities, Fortune 500 companies, and nonprofits across the country. He has helped thousands of students and leaders find their way to a better future through career readiness, life coaching, and direct hiring opportunities. Charles is with us today to share his incredible journey from welfare in a broken home to the creation of programs that support others in achieving their success. Thank you so much for joining us today, Charles.
It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your passion for children and families.
I would say it probably is more broad than that. It's really just around, people in general. Like I want people to be their best selves and to have the ability to navigate life and get to the happiest places that are possible for them. I think that because of my unique background, there's certainly a stronger passion for children because I've experienced a lot of childhood adversity and childhood trauma. But I would say, generally speaking, like I want everyone to be happy, healthy, successful, and thriving. And one of the things that I found is, you have to have a pretty good measure of resilience in order to accomplish that level of happiness, in order to reach that level of happiness, because we're all going to have a delta between what it is that we want and what it is that life gives us. And for me, the level of resilience or the amount of resilience that we have really ends up being the difference there. That's that delta.
Can you tell us a little bit or share with us some of your early childhood experiences that have shaped the work that you do today?
Yeah, unfortunately, the bad luck truck made quite a few deliveries to my door as a youth. I spent, my entire childhood in economically disadvantaged, crime-ridden, drug-infested neighborhoods. I lived in public housing, in housing projects for a large part of my childhood. My mother unfortunately developed the same disease of addiction that today's opioid users receive compassion and treatment for. And unfortunately for her and for me and our family, she spent some time in jail as well. And that addiction ended up being fairly strong. She was, she battled with addiction for, 3/4 of my life until she passed away 11 years ago. My father was unfortunately murdered when I was 10 years old. So, I had a very short amount of time to actually spend with him. And obviously, that's a traumatic experience
Yeah.
for one to have to deal with, on top of the things that I was dealing with my mom, and her not being able to be there for me in the way that I would have liked. My mom's addiction got so strong that my sister, I have an older sister, she and I ended up being taken in by our grandmother. So I
Mhm.
was about 9 years old or so. And you know, that was, it's a difficult thing. I mean, because it's not, you're not your parents, not the people who you really want and need to be able to protect you. And even that, had its challenges as well. As I know my grandmother loved me to pieces, but at the same time, she played a little bit of favorites. I wasn't one of those favorites, unfortunately. So, I had to fend for myself a pretty great deal. Not having my mom, not having my dad, and having my grandmother, at times feeling at odds with me. And you know all of that, and I had I played sports, but had a traumatic eye injury when I was 13 years old, nearly blind in one eye. um, a host of other things that just kind of happenstance. It's not necessarily something that I did. It's just life. And unfortunately I caught some bad breaks. One thing I can say is that you know the conditions that I was raised in did help me to grow and be a very independent person. So because I didn't have my mom, I didn't have my dad, didn't always feel like I had my grandmother. I learned independence, and I moved out of my grandmother's place in the middle of my senior year of high school, and I've been on my own since. Put myself through undergraduate, through college to get my first degree, and I have 2 degrees: business administration, with focus or emphasis in new and small business ventures, and purchasing and materials management. So put myself through undergrad for that, and then also got a master's degree, a master of science in financial analysis. So became the first in my family to attain not just 1 degree but 2 degrees. Um, but please believe those challenges in those early years, certainly they helped shape me. Certainly they helped to mold me. They left a humongous impact on me. But they also help to fuel me that I can overcome anything if I can endure those situations. Knock on wood. There isn't a situation known to man that I won't be able to face. Doesn't mean it won't be difficult, but somehow I can find a way through it.
I understand it. It was like being in your own personal boot camp of sorts,
Yeah,
right? Because
very,
there's something that you can overcome once you're fully trained. I just rewatched your amazing TEDx talk,
thank you.
Succeeding Despite Trauma Through Resilience and Hope. Um, Let me ask you a question. Do you remember where you were the first time you heard the term resilience?
Um, I honestly I don't. I know that it's kind of a ubiquitous word in our society now. You'll hear it used in various walks of life. A sports team, on a tough victory, at the end of it, they're interviewed. Our resilience. We fought through injuries and these type of adversities and obstacles. Um, you'll hear it in civic life. There's so many different areas in which it's broached, that honestly um, I can't exactly picture or remember where I got that term from. But interesting sidebar to that question. My company is called the Audacity firm, and I know exactly where I got that term from and where I learned that from.
Where?
My fourth and fifth grade teacher was a beautiful woman by the name of Miss Goodwin. And she had a term that she would use whenever we would do something kind of unsightly, we acting out of sorts, not paying attention, talking back, whatever. And she would always say, the audacity of you, right? Like basically, the unmitigated gall of you as a child, a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, to talk back or to not do your assignment, to not follow instructions or directions. Like the unmitigated gall of you, the audacity of, like, who do you think you are? Right? And the richness of that statement was something that just always stuck with me. It didn't necessarily manifest in, like, everyday life, but it was just something that just always resonated with me, like audacity, right?
And the emotion behind it.
Right.
The audacity.
Like she was almost, beside herself.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't believe it. Like,
like how outrageous.
The temerity of you. Yeah. How, like, outlandish.
Yeah.
Right. Like she was just so surprised and taken by it. And so, yeah, not only the definition of it, but the emotion and the meaning, the emotion and the application of it to me was something that just stuck with me. And so, you fast forward, years later, and I'm deciding that it's time for me to, finally kind of invest in myself and see if I can build this business, if I can build this brand.
Sure.
And honestly, there was no other consideration for a name for the enterprise that I was looking to do. It was Audacity, right?
It means itself.
Yeah, because it's like the audacity of me to have even gotten to this far.
Right.
The audacity of me to have taken all of those obstacles, all of those bricks, all of that rubble, and then sift through it and then find something to actually build something stable from, something prosperous from. And I truly feel like, in what I'm doing, I'm building that capability in others. So yes, I'm trying to instill hope. I'm trying to instill resilience, but I also want you to be audacious enough to be able to overcome whatever mountains, whatever obstacles that have been placed in your path, whether that was through pure happenstance or luck, or your own decisions that you can still come back from.
That was such an incredible piece of imagery that you just created that I want to make sure our listener heard it. And what you said was basically sifting through all of the rubble to find that one solid piece, that one nugget that you can build an empire off of, essentially.
Absolutely. That is exactly it. It's recognizing that, to follow along with that imagery and that notion that, some explosion has happened, some destruction has occurred, right? And then, after we, do triage, make sure that we're physically healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally strong, you're still left with this destruction zone, right? The impact of the blast that has occurred, right? And so from there, it's like, all right, well, how am I going to move forward? Well, what I had was destroyed, right? Everything that I thought I previously could rely on has now somehow been disrupted, has somehow been torn down. All right, well, I'm not meant to stay in this place, right? I'm not meant to stay in this exploded, dilapidated, broken down place. So the next phase is, all right, well, what am I going to do next to get to some measure of better, right? Everything around me isn't usable. It's not in the same form anymore. It's somehow been, flipped upside down, or, like I said, just destroyed. And so the concept for me has always been around, all right, well, how can I sift through all of this stuff, all of this muck, and then let's see if there's some things that I can actually build off of. And then it's not a total loss, right? It's not a complete and total loss. I'm not starting completely from scratch. Like, to ignore the resources that are around me, even in destruction, would be putting myself at a disadvantage, right? Because now I'm robbing myself of some resources that actually could be of service, that could be of value, even though they come from a very painful experience, right? It comes from everything that I had previously held dear being destroyed, right? But once I can accept that, and recognize I can, try to move on and build, and I need to move on and build, the first place for me to start is in the midst of the actual explosion or the blast or the results of that blast, because that's a resource that's right there and pliable for me.
You're not only robbing yourself if you can't pick up a piece of the rubble and build from it, but you're robbing society of all of those gifts and talents that you have, right? One would be robbing society.
Indeed. I think one of the points that I made at the end of my TED talk was that, I was thanking the listener, or trying to figure out where I was going, who I was talking to in my talk, and ultimately realizing that I was talking to the varying versions of myself, right? To my younger self, to my college self, to my professional self, even my future self with adversity that I hadn't quite yet encountered. To just remind myself at each of those stages that you can overcome anything, that you are indeed unbreakable. But I also noted that, if anyone who happened to have been listening to that monologue I was having with myself, if they found something in what I was saying to myself to help their younger self, their college self, their professional self, their future self, then, I was having a conversation with them too. And thanking them, because in doing so, that's me giving all of the trauma, all of the muck, all of the stuff that I've been through, it's giving it a purpose, right? The most resilient among us will, find a reason for the circumstances that befall them. And then upon discovery, put it to use either for themselves or for others. So I really can't understate how important it is for me to be in my own healing, to be able to articulate and get out, hey, here's what I've experienced, here's what I've gone through, but here's also what I've been able to do with it to help encourage other people that they can overcome, that they can surmount and surpass the different adversities that they go through as well. Because again, now that when I see, or I have a conversation with someone after a talk that I've given, or I get a random email or a random direct message from someone telling me, hey, I've been through adversity similar to yours, or, maybe not as bad, maybe it was worse. But seeing your talk, I got so much hope, I got inspiration, etc. Like that gives me a sense of like, hey, what I went through, as terrible as it was for me, as painful as it was for me, as much as I wish it was a completely different circumstance that I didn't have to go through, at least I'm able to help somebody else with it. I'm able to give someone else the extra fuel to get to wherever their next fuel up location is, right? That means that I showed up for my assignment. And that gives me a certain measure of pride and joy.
Beautiful. I'd like to encourage our audience to check out your TEDx talk, What Trauma Taught Me About Resilience.
Pretty good. I saw myself.
Yep. And in the end, at the end of that TEDx talk, you were talking about resilience, partnership, and perseverance, and giving your trauma a purpose. Having said that, what factors play a role when someone is able to lift themselves past their trauma and past the things that have occurred to them and turn them into something that has happened for them so that they can find those nuggets? Like, what makes that difference between someone who can move forward and someone who can't? And what would you say to that person?
Yeah. So one of my, kind of pet sayings is that, we're as resilient as we think we are.
Mm.
And what that means is, at its core, if you want to be more resilient, the answer is very simple. We have to think better, because resilience ultimately starts in our minds. It's what we tell ourselves about what we experience, like even in
Mm.
the moment. And those messages that we tell ourselves have huge implications downstream, right? So the beliefs that we hold will impact the thoughts that we have. Thoughts that we have will impact the feelings that we will internalize. Those feelings will then impact the actions that we take, and those actions are going to lead to the results that we have. So it's really kind of this circle that if you want to impact it or get to better results, then it starts with being able to look at what it is that we experience and reframe it, or frame it in the context that is most helpful for us. And so that's really the biggest piece of it. It's trying to corral the mind, right? And to further answer, I guess maybe the back end of your question, um, one of the principles that I speak on as far as helping to build resilience, you noted the purpose and partnership and et cetera. But another really big piece of that is perspective, right? And
Mm.
perspective is, how do I look at or regard varying situations, right? Your view and your vantage point that you have of me is a little different than the vantage point that I have of you, right? Because we're in different places. If I lean over here, the vantage is a little bit different. If I sit up, if I stand up, it's all going to lead to a different perspective and a different view. And I think oftentimes we as individuals have to learn to regard the varying situations that we find ourselves in a different light, and especially in a light that's going to be more helpful, positive, or fruitful for us in our recovery from it. And that can sometimes be a very difficult thing. We have a natural orientation. Sometimes that might be towards negativity, right? And that's where, hey, if we recognize that that perspective or that viewpoint, that vantage point isn't serving us well, then maybe it's time for us to shift it. Maybe there's a different way. Maybe there are multiple ways that we can look at this situation that isn't as harmful or destructive for us. And so that ability to change that perspective becomes very, very important in aiding our.
The ability to shift perspective is so important, not just on an individual level, but as a society in totality. And I'm going to circle back to something you said a little bit earlier at the beginning of the interview, which is that what your mother went through with her addiction is now what society is focused on when it comes to the opioid crisis. So I think it's really important for everybody to understand that whatever is happening in one microcosm, the attention needs to be placed on that microcosm and not wait for problems to become macrocosms. And that's also a shift in perspective, but it's more of a community perspective. It's more of a society perspective.
Yeah, and to put a finer point on it, especially from a societal standpoint or lens, we can't ignore the racial element of it. My mom was a young Black woman in the '80s at the height of the crack epidemic, right? And that is viewed, it's handled, it's resourced in a very, very different way than today's opioid users, where the face of it is more white.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Super important to look at society issues like that across the board. Can you tell us some of the programs that you have in place for individuals and for corporations at the Audacity firm?
Yeah. So um, I typically will tell, an organization that, that organization is only as resilient as the individuals who run it. right? So if you want your organization to be able to bounce back and recover from, performance issues, uh, product issues, bad press, um, a poor quarter, or dwindling resources, or donations and fundraising,
Mhm.
whatever the issues are that an organization finds itself in, it's only going to be resilient as an order, as an enterprise, if the individuals who run it are are resilient themselves. And that individual resilience starts with individuals. It starts with each of us being able to have the tools to process what life throws at us. Not only from a corporate standpoint, but those people who work in the enterprise, they go home, right? They have families, they have personal lives, they have financial issues, they have relationship issues, they have concerns about where their career is going, or the trajectory and direction. They have concerns about their education. There's health issues and health concerns. All of those things, individuals have to be solidified and fortified against when those forces start to come against them. And so my charge is really trying to help the individual at any age, because the thing about life is none of us are immune to change. None of us are immune from circumstances that are less than ideal or what we would desire, right? So there are kids who wish that they could jump higher, or were prettier, or were thinner, or whatever the issue is at even a young age, right? They've already internalized that they wish that something could be different, that their parents had more money, that they could go on this trip or go to Disney World, whatever. There's something that they desire, right? Even at that young age. That's something that never goes away. We're all going to experience that. And so my message is really universal for everyone, in helping us to deal with those deltas between what it is that we have versus what it is we want, and helping people to move forward in that. So I provide training, and I provide keynote talks to organizations to help fortify and strengthen those individuals, hopefully before that adversity comes. But sometimes we need that recharge and we need that refuel in the midst of it as well.
Thank you for that. In honor of April being Child Abuse Awareness Prevention Month, what would you say might be a factor in helping individuals to become self-aware to break the cycle of abuse?
Um, that's a tough one. I am fortunate that I have been fairly self-aware. That's kind of
Yeah.
a blessing that I've been able to be able to experience. And so I do a lot of trying to peel back the onion, uh,
Mhm.
trying to understand what is it that I'm feeling, what is it that I'm experiencing, because for me that aids in my own healing. Because I've experienced so much trauma and so much adversity, one of the things I found is I don't like being in that place. So for me, it immediately becomes, all right, well, how do I get myself from this terrible, mucky place that I don't like to safer ground, or something that feels better? And the only way that I can do that is to be more self aware. As far as how to build that, uh, I honestly don't quite have the answer. I'm not that steeped in the subject matter. This is one of those things where, it's like you're asking LeBron, like, how does he, jump as high as he does? It's like,
Right. It's asking, like, what does water taste like?
yeah, like he just can, right? Like, so for me, it is one thing that I can say about it is it's intentional. It is very much a deliberate act on my part to examine what it is that I'm feeling, what it is that I'm thinking, And what I can say about that is that means that you're going to have to investigate some things that don't necessarily feel good. You're going to discover some things that don't necessarily feel good in the moment. But for me, I've learned that that's my best path forward, because I don't want those landmines to stay around and ultimately blow up down the line, either on me or someone else. So as much as possible, I feel like for my own health, for my own safety, it's imperative that, I kind of lean into whatever it is that I'm feeling.
True. And we really don't know what we don't know about ourselves. So it's always important to explore because, like you said, it can become a landmine on us down the road.
Right.
So very important to become self-aware. And I love what you said about it's an intentional act. Becoming self-aware, it's just very intentional.
Yeah.
Where can our listener find you?
www.audacityfirm.com is the website. On social media, you can find me on Twitter. My company handle is the Audacity Firm. My personal handle is Chizarone, Chizarone. And feel free to always send me a message. If you go to my website, audacityfirm.com, there's a contact page. If I can help bring resilience to either your organization or to your youth, feel free to reach out and let's see how we can partner.
Awesome. That would be amazing. So the American Society for the Positive Care of Children is so appreciative that you shared time with us today and that you dropped those amazing insights. So thank you so much. If you just hang on for just one moment, I'm just going to close out the show. And I urge you to see Charles Hunt, his TEDx, What Trauma Taught Me About Resilience. Incredible, incredible TEDx Charlotte TED Talk. So again, thank you so much for being here today, Charles. And if you are a struggling parent or caregiver, know that you're not alone. To access more positive parenting resources like you see here, just visit our learning center at americanspcc.org. Thanks to our viewers, our donors, our supporters, we've provided over 5 million parents, teachers, caregivers with the tools needed to help children build a brighter future. I'd also like to remind everybody to please visit americanspcc.org and download the Happy Child app. I love this tool. I use it myself with my 12-year-old. It's made a huge difference in the way that I communicate with my children. It's been researched by a team of PhDs and neurologists and psychiatrists. And in short snippets, it shows us how the chemicals in our children's brains work so that we can form connections with them and teach them how to respond to situations and build happiness for a lifetime, not just a momentary, 5-minute bout of happiness that, again, they need a quick fix in a few minutes, that this is just this ongoing lifetime, ongoing happiness that if they get off track, they can steer themselves right back on track and also help us form better, deeper connections with our children. If you would like to contribute to the conversation or you know somebody doing some really positive things in your community, please reach out to us at info@americanspcc.org. We would love to spotlight them. We'd love to hear about it. Let's make a difference together. Again, for more positive parenting resources, visit us at americanspcc.org and learn how you can help. And remember, a better future starts here.